Look into the camera and just say hello and welcome to a special, and just say hello and welcome to another episode of Bored at the Right Time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bored at the Right Time.
There's only a handful of people that know kind of what went on, because even though the cameras were rolling, there's still hours and hours that weren't filmed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What other misconceptions did you go in with?
That kind of changed after you watched the film?
Did you like any of the songs better after you're hearing like them being shaped to like Get Back started as a protest song?
I think The Long and Winding Road, I have a lot more respect for that song. Well, after hearing Let It Be Naked, I had a lot more respect for it. But I feel like that's where you see Paul McCartney. That's the beginning of his many, many great ballads. Like in his solo career, tons of great ballads. I feel like that's where it really, like, that song is pretty monumental. I really enjoyed seeing that song kind of take shape. Because when you break it down to just him on piano, I'm like, okay, I get it.
Let It Be has always been plagued as an album that just doesn't sound good. I think the 2012 vinyl pressing is awful. I think the CD is okay. I think the only real way to listen to it is Let It Be Naked. It's almost like they wanted to make an album out of a soundtrack. So like all those little bits and pieces like Maggie May and Dig It and those little bits that were edited in between, that's more soundtracky stuff. Like that's specifically made to be the soundtrack for the film. And that's kind of how it came together. But Let It Be Naked is more of an album, like a collection of songs that can be played together.
John Lennon has always been hailed as, or at least I've always heard of him as the genius behind the Beatles. He and Paul McCartney, were a great duo throughout their history. But it seems like on this album, I didn't realize he didn't bring as much to the table. His guitar playing is fantastic, especially he really seems to take the lead on a lot of stuff, which I didn't really...
You know why, right?
That George didn't want to?
George left the band.
Oh,
so it was going
okay.
to be the Threetles.
Oh, okay. Because, yeah, I always thought of him more as the rhythm player. So those are two misconceptions with one person, with John. I don't feel like he brought as... I didn't realize he didn't bring as much songwriting to the table on this album, but I also didn't realize how much guitar playing he brought to this album.
John Lennon would go home and write songs and come in the next day with them, whereas Paul McCartney would just like come up with them on the spot. And they would bounce off each other. There's that famous story that Paul McCartney tells about Hey Jude, where it's, the movement you need is on your shoulder. He's playing Hey Jude for John Lennon the first time, and he says, oh, I'm going to change that line. And John's like, no, you're not. That's a great line. I know exactly what it means. It stays in. Lennon-McCartney, or McCartney-Lennon, as it's known now, flourished so well because they kind of had each other, to bounce things off of. I almost think it was like because I loved him so much, that's why you always used to pan Paul McCartney and be like, oh, he's okay.
He was always billed as like the egomaniac bully of the band, but by people who had never, been there. So I guess I just bought into that. Enjoying more of his solo albums and, reading more about the making of them, like Ram,
So your Paul McCartney enlightenment kind of came after I played you Ram, and you heard what he was doing, kind of how he invented indie rock, and I think it kind of blew your mind.
Because I think those albums really show his songwriting broken down, including the, what's the one he did with Jeff Lynne?
Flaming Pie.
Like listening to the demos and stuff of that, you can really see it all broken down. I think that's where a lot of that started to change. But then watching this, like during these sessions, again, same with Yoko, you always heard that Paul McCartney, broke up the Beatles too, and he was just, bullying everyone. And what I saw was Ringo was there. He just wanted to play drums. You can see him through the whole documentary. He's like waiting. He's like, just give me something to play to. And as soon as they start up, he's there. John had his own personal problems, it seems. George, I think it seems like he had gone to California, got into this whole different thing, came back and, had this burst of creativity that they weren't really into. at the time. Like the more California scene, it seems like Paul McCartney and John, they wanted to do more a rock and roll album. And so it seems like, yeah, someone had to take charge. No Epstein this time.
I saw Paul McCartney's vulnerability for like the first time ever. Usually he's so confident, bold, cocky, but this time you kind of see that he's vulnerable.
He just wanted to make songs. He wanted to make an album.
Yeah, he just wanted to make an album. He pushed them.
But I feel like he must have felt so free when he really got into his solo albums. And no wonder he made so many of them. He flourished.
Did it surprise you that Ringo not only wrote Octopus's Garden, but that he could play it on piano?
What's actually surprised me about him was how humble he seemed during the whole thing. Like, they're bringing, Get Back and Let It Be. George Harrison comes in with All Things Must Pass. Like these insane songs. And Ringo comes in with, what's the song, Carolina?
Yeah, he's going to Carolina.
It's not as good, but he's like, he's proud of it. It's what he's got, and he's fine with that. And I thought that was pretty cool, like just his humbleness and his just willingness to just, I'm here to play.
I'd love to kind of hear you talk about each Beatle and the role that each of them played in this project.
So we'll start with Paul. Biggest change for me was seeing less ego, more driving force. And I always knew he was a good songwriter, but this was just like, holy shit. Like, the amount of just pure songwriting coming out of him throughout this documentary was pretty amazing. It seems like, I don't think there would be a Let It Be or Abbey Road without him. We would have had a mess. We would have had just an absolute mess. So that's kind of the way I see Paul in this, like the leader. George, I see as, it feels like he was there out of almost obligation. Like he felt like he had to be there. He had said he'd been to California, like I guess like Laurel Canyon and stuff, and hung with all those guys and jammed with them, and came back and was like, I don't like. It was a completely different direction, and I think he already had so much. And he even says in it that he was going to do a solo album. He's talking to John, and that's where he seems excited when he's talking about that. And he, I think, felt like, as the Beatle, I think that got so much bigger than them, where they all felt this like Beatle obligation. And it seems to me like that's why he was there, and you could feel it. Like he didn't really want to be there, but he still got some good songs. Ringo just seemed, he was sitting there at one point, Paul McCartney's like writing stuff on the piano, and he's just leaning on it, just looking at him, like almost in awe, like watching this come out of him. And I think Ringo's respect for everyone throughout this really shone through. I think that he just wanted to play. He's like, he was ready. The second anyone started jamming or something, he would just come in. He was behind his kit. He was quiet kind of the whole time, just letting these guys hash it out. And when they needed him, he was there.
I feel like no matter how much animosity was going on between them, like as soon as someone counted in the song, all of that went out the window. Like as soon as the record light went on, the bullshit stopped. They played the song. It was like the olden days. It was fantastic.
You see them trudging through, trying to get going, and then, they really want to do this like rock and roll kind of thing, back to basics. They want to get everything, get that live sound back there. And I know they ended up needing someone to play like a piano, which ended up being a Fender Rhodes. And then they got Billy in, and you can see everything change.
It's like they're on their best behavior.
It's like what you're talking about when they start jamming, or when the record light goes on. Yeah. When Billy's there and he adds that like soul into there, that like just like kind of swing in some of the Fender Rhodes parts, like it's fantastic. And you can see like his enthusiasm to be there is like reflected back. you know?
It's almost, like how Ringo would listen to the song and then he would just start playing and he'd know when to hit the drums, when not to hit the drums, when to play, when not to play, when. And I think Billy did the same exact thing. He'd listen to the song and he'd just start joining in, and it's like kismet. It's magic. It's this. He knew exactly what to play, when to play, how hard to play, when not to play. I really don't think that record would be the same without him.
Having been in bands, having been in recording sessions and stuff, when you're across from someone, you're playing like a riff or working on something, and someone else just starts like vibing with you, it's fireworks. And I think that's what happened. Like, yeah, Paul and John were kind of, they were kind of messing around, going back and forth. I think it's why they kept playing all these like standards to really get in the groove together. But Billy comes in, he starts playing, he'll add some chords in here and there, and it's just like you can see them all light up, everyone, and everyone's just happier, and they're like getting through songs better and faster at that point. And I think they really needed this outside person to come in, and I think it was perfect.
So on that note, thanks, Austin, for being a special guest. And as always, please like, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe down here. Till next time, thanks for watching. Okay, cut. Awesome.
And
Okay, I'm going to cut. You and me can still talk.